HBO's The Gilded Age is about to dive into one of the most spectacular social downfalls in American history. Ward McAllister, the man who coined the phrase the 400 and served as Mrs. Astor's gatekeeper to high society, is heading for a crash that will destroy everything he spent decades building. If you've been watching season 3, you know the show is setting up McAllister's decision to write a tell-all book about his wealthy friends. What's coming next is historically accurate, with the exception of the year. Currently, it's 1884 in our story. Ward published Society If I Have Found It in 1890. But regardless, the repercussions are absolutely devastating. He'll betray every secret, every scandal, and every embarrassing moment of New York's elite. The result? Complete social exile and a lonely death. Today's video focuses specifically on Ward McAllister's undoing, how a man who spent his entire inheritance on a single party outfit and climbed to the very top of society ultimately destroyed himself with his own arrogance. This segment is taken from a comprehensive video I published about Ward McAllister's full life story over a year ago, and I'll post a link to that complete video in the description for those who want the entire fascinating tale. It's truly worth watching if you want to know how he got his start, and I'm not just saying that because it's my video. But right now, let's dive into the spectacular destruction of the man who thought he was untouchable. So here was the situation. There was a socially prominent woman named Mrs. John C. Stevens. She was holding a fancy dress ball, and she gave Ward McAllister an invitation to it. Apparently, this ball had been the talk of the town in the weeks leading up to it. All of the socialites were spending a lot of money for wild costumes to wear to this dance. Ward was thrilled just to get the invitation, and he was not going to pass up on an opportunity to go. But he knew that the costume that he could afford would be no match for what the other attendees would be wearing. But luckily for him, a relative who left him $1,000 died just in time for Ward to be able to get that money and to spend it on a suit. A suit that would help him to not only blend in with the wealthy crowd that he admired so much, but even to stand out among them. Here's how his actions were described in a newspaper from that time. Quote, "No sooner had he pocketed his $1,000 than Ward McAllister hurried off to the most fashionable costumer of that day. He spent the entire amount on his costume, which was the richest and handsomest at the ball, and made Ward McAllister an outstanding figure for a few short hours." End quote. A few short hours. You can tell where his priorities were. After the ball, Ward left to go spend some time in Europe. He liked spending time there because he could live comfortably for less money than he could in New York City. Now, just keep in mind, he had no money, at least not in a significant sense. No high birth, no credentials. So it was nothing more than charm and an expensive suit that opened every door for Ward McAllister. Take note, fellas. But when he returned to NYC, he met the Commodore Vanderbilt, who had by this time become a multi-million-dollar railroad magnate. For some reason, Vanderbilt just liked Ward McAllister. He liked him so much that he wanted to help him out financially. He could see that where finances were concerned, Ward was way out of his league in keeping up with the affluent crowd that he wanted to be around. So Vanderbilt would give McAllister stock market tips, likely some insider trading info, and those tips would allow McAllister to earn some pretty big profits. But what did he do? He spent the money almost as quickly as he earned it, and he didn't use that money to expand his investment portfolio. No, that would have been silly. Ward spent that money on more parties, more expensive dinners, more entertainment that kept his face in the faces of those moneyed people of Manhattan. Commodore Vanderbilt hated seeing Ward be so foolish with his money. He wanted Ward to have a future that would last him a lifetime, so on several occasions, he offered to set up businesses for him. McAllister always refused it, telling Vanderbilt, "Society is my business, and I'll make a success of it." And as we know, he did make a success of it. Unfortunately for him, his successful society business didn't come with any long-term money, at least not the way that Ward ran his business operations. It seems like his company manual could be summed up in one sentence: spend everything you earn on expensive parties. Sounds like a lot of fun, but not sustainable. If it sounds odd to you that a man like Commodore Vanderbilt, who was so focused, so driven, so business-minded, would have kept wasting his time trying to help a foolish man like Ward McAllister become a successful, money-making businessman, here's an anecdote from an 1895 edition of The Sun that might give you some insight. Quote, Commodore Vanderbilt frequently told the story of how McAllister had admitted to him that he had watched a great dinner given by Queen Victoria, after having been smuggled through the servants' entrance to Buckingham Palace by an English friend. And to canny Commodore Vanderbilt, that represented an ambition to go places and do things. End quote. I mean, I don't know if a person ever existed who lived more for a gala than Ward McAllister. But back to his society business, he really was a success until he wasn't. But he had a long run, almost 20 years. And it all started and ended with Mrs. Astor, Caroline Schermerhorn Astor, the Mrs. Astor, the matriarch of the male line of American Astors. One of her sons was John Jacob Astor IV, the richest man who died on the Titanic. Not long after he hit the social scene in that knockout ball costume, he got to meet Mrs. Astor in 1872. It was reported that that was the supreme moment in his life, and he made the most of it. She liked him too, but she could see that he was in awe of her. She was the top hostess in New York, and it was clear that he knew everything about taking entertaining to new heights. So, to be frank, Mrs. Astor saw in Ward McAllister someone who she could use. And he was so starstruck by her that he was willing to let her do it. With Ward McAllister at her side, all of her society friends who had always accepted her party invitations because she was Caroline Astor were now eager to accept her party invitations because Ward knew how to party. So the replies to her invitations weren't yes, but heck yes. And it was through his connection with Mrs. Astor that the phrase McAllisters 400 was born. When he was helping to stage the production that was the Astor's annual ball, a news reporter went to the location to get some info for the New York World. Mrs. Astor was too busy to talk to the reporter, so she simply put Ward McAllister on the job. And of course, he was all too excited to speak to the press, and especially on behalf of Mrs. Astor. When asked how many people would attend, he told the reporter, quote, "Only 400. Mrs. Astor never has more than 400 guests because that is the capacity of her ballroom." And from there, the 400, or McAllisters 400, was coined and is still associated with his name until this day. And for years, Ward McAllister put on balls, dances, and parties for the well-off set in New York in conjunction with Mrs. Astor. The whole time, he was judging who got to come to his parties and who did not, who got to be a part of society and who could not. Millionaires and their families sought his approval. They needed his nod to know that they were in. And the whole time that this was going on, McAllister was living a very modest life in a small, plain house and barely had any money. But he knew how to put on airs. Some would say, fake it till you make it. Well, Ward knew how to fake it, but he never made it. Yet still, he rose up in the ranks of society as long as he was Mrs. Astor's pet. But you know what they say? What goes up must come down. And after decades of being Mrs. Astor's party man, he went broke. I wonder how all of those millionaires who were not allowed access to high society because Ward McAllister didn't want them there, I wonder how they felt knowing that a poor man who was an imposter was the one who was telling them that they were not good enough. McAllister transitioned from the climactic point to the downhill slope in his society career in 1890. That was when his book, Society as I Have Found It, was published. To be precise, it was called Society as I Have Found It, The Cuisine, Culture, and Fashions of Europe and North America in the 19th Century by a Man Who Toured the Era's Finds. You know, a quick short title. And the book made him seem as pompous and arrogant as that title sounds. It was meant to be a tell-all about his society parties that detailed some of the most embarrassing and salacious moments of the city's elite. This memoir was supposed to make him a lot of money because he knew that the outsiders wanted to know what was going on behind the doors of those ballrooms. But in the book, he didn't disclose names. It was written in a manner that if you didn't know those situations personally, you would have had a hard time figuring out who he was writing about. He didn't have a kind word to say about anyone in the book, and the critics didn't have a kind word to say about him or his stupid book. As a matter of fact, it made him a subject of ridicule, with a reviewer for The Autocrat writing, quote, "To assume to describe a society destitute of humor, of wit, of position or distinction, of kindly deeds and generous, unostentatious hospitality is but to make the author and the subject alike ridiculous." End quote. This is how he was talking about his friends, the society that he created. And this reviewer is saying if those people are that way, lacking wit, humor, position, etc., you're the one who picked them, so you must be the same way too, Ward. His book didn't end up being the slam that he thought it would be against the people he wrote about. It made everyone look at him like he was stupid. Another critic joked that he would need to write a second book called Society as I Have Lost It. Good joke, and I see what you did there. But that certainly was the case. And was it even worth it for Ward? I wonder. He only made $2,000 from book sales in the end. So it didn't accomplish his goal of making him a rich man. But it did accomplish one thing that he did not expect. His writing that book caused him to fall out of grace with the society that he loved so much and helped to create. But the most crushing part for him was that it made an enemy out of Mrs. Astor, his queen of 20 years. And it is without question that he died a bitter man. The high society that he helped to build turned its back on him when he grew old and out of fashion. He felt as though he had been used and cast aside by a society that had kept him poor instead of making him rich. He really should have listened to Vanderbilt, who had on more than one occasion given him tips on how to get rich. Literally how to get rich. This was probably the only time in the history of man that some get-rich-quick advice actually would have worked. But that's neither here nor there. On the last week of January in 1895, Ward McAllister got sick with the grip. Today we call that influenza or the flu. After being down for a few days, it looked like he would recover. Then he became more ill than the days before. On January 31st, 1895, Ward McAllister died at home, while there was a charity ball going on at Carnegie Hall, an event for which in his better days he certainly would have been at the top of the guest list. Law really was in this family's DNA. Ward's eldest son and namesake, Ward McAllister Jr., who was not among the family members surrounding him when he died, was also an attorney in California, and that's where he was when his father died. But Ward did have some family at his bedside. His wife was there, his other son, Hayward McAllister, and his daughter, Louise, were all there. And his brother, Reverend Dr. Francis Marion McAllister, was there as well. I told you that I'd get back to him. And this brother also died the same year as Ward. And after all of those years of service devoted to his queen, Mrs. Astor, she did not even attend his funeral. She, instead, held a dinner party that night. Ward McAllister's life is an example of when butt-kissing goes tragically wrong. But till this day, he remains the inspiration for the term the 400 or McAllisters 400. You can search his name on Google and the 400 will likely appear. And by the way that he lived a majority of his adult life for the frivolity and pomp and circumstance of high society, he might be honored to know that he is still widely remembered for curating his list of 400 members who are worthy enough for society, in his eyes. If you want to see a story about a lady who had plenty of money but was too scandalous for high society, check out my video on Arabella Huntington, the real-life inspiration for Mrs. Chamberlain on the Gilded Age. She was a woman who lived during the Gilded Age, whose marriage brought her a lot of money and the scandal that kept her out of society. And if you want to move a little bit past the Gilded Age, you can check out my video about Mrs. Astor's son, John Jacob Astor IV, and his disastrous Titanic experience that led to his death. I'll leave links to both videos in the description box. My sources for this story are The Sun Archives, 1895, World's Fair Chicago, 1893, City Beautiful blog, and Pittsburgh Sun-Telegraph Archives, 1941. Thank you so much for supporting this content. HBO's The Gilded Age. Hey, I'm gonna put you outside. It was written in a manner that they... Charlie. Stop. You're supposed to be asleep. That was probably the only time in the history of man that some... Hey. Charlie. Leave her alone. Law really was in this family's DNA. Ward's eldest son and namesake, Ward McAllister Jr., who was not among the family members surrounding him when he died, was also an attorney in California, and that's where he was when his father died. Hey! I'm trying to do some work so you can eat. Y'all can play after I finish recording. Charlie, leave it alone. Let me finish. This video has been brought to you by me. Well, me and my new YouTube channel, Verified YouTube Guide. Are you just starting your YouTube journey and feeling overwhelmed? Don't worry, I've got you covered. My channel, Verified YouTube Guide, is your go-to resource for practical, step-by-step tips to grow and monetize your channel. It's literally follow-along video tutorials. I'm showing you the steps I took to get 180,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you don't know how to do something, you can just copy my work one step at a time. From setting up your channel to showing you how you can earn money at any stage on YouTube, and I'm not just talking about YouTube ad revenue. If you have something important to say or a service to sell, start talking about it on YouTube now. Don't wait. Subscribe to Verified YouTube Guide today, and let's build your channel together. You don't have to figure this out alone. The link is in the description box. I'll see you there. I hope that you have enjoyed this tale so far. If you love these scandalous stories from history that make Ty's Hot Mess History a time capsule for the culture, hit subscribe and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Give this video a thumbs up. It's free and helps a ton. Whether you're watching or listening, thank you for letting me be a part of your day.